I knew something was wrong the moment they played that techno remix of Don't Stop Believin'. The lights dimmed. The fog machines kicked in. A giant LED screen behind the stage flashed the words Future Forward in Helvetica so bright it hurt. And then came the voice. Our next chapter begins with bold decisions, said Colin Hallior-Golden, Boy CEO, in his signature silk, smooth tone. He stood center stage at the Halden Tech Leadership Summit, surrounded by applause, string lights, and the kind of fake optimism you only get from over-caffeinated PR teams. I was standing off to the side, holding a champagne flute engraved with Innovate Relentlessly. After 12 years building the product division from a backroom experiment to a $90 million powerhouse, I thought I was here to be honored. Instead, he called my name. Not in private, not in a closed-door review, no. Right there on stage under a spotlight. I want to take a moment to recognize Claire Morgan, he said with a bright smile. Her contributions have been invaluable. And as we pivot toward new horizons, we encourage her to explore fresh adventures beyond Halden. Applause. Real applause. Like a standing ovation at a funeral. Before I could process what was happening, two men in black blazers stepped up beside me, security. One reached for my elbow like I was some kind of criminal or reality television reject. My badge buzzed and locked. The screen behind Colin now read Vision 2025, as if I'd already vanished. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just let them walk me off stage like a prop being cleared between acts. The worst part? Some people clapped. People I mentored. People I trusted. Have you ever been erased in real time while smiling faces pretend it's progress? If you've ever been blindsided by the very company you helped build, or just want to see how one woman turned silence into power, stick around. Claire's not done yet. And neither are you. The silence hit harder than the dismissal. Not the kind of silence that follows a loud moment, but the kind that stretches on for hours, days, even without breaking. The kind that hums in your ears and makes your own breathing feel too loud. I got back to my apartment in Seattle just after midnight. No one was waiting up. Not that I expected anyone. But still, I checked my phone twice. No missed calls, no texts. Not even a what happened. From people who had smiled at me just that morning. The badge I used to swipe into my building's garage now felt like a dead weight in my pocket. The Halden Tech logo on it gleamed in the hallway light, as if mocking me. When I finally sat down, my laptop company issued. Top of the line flashed a message the second I opened it. Access denied. This device has been deactivated. Just like that. No warning, no thank you, just gone. My inbox? Wiped. Slack? Logged out. My employee portal? Gone too. Even the health benefits page gave me a red error message, like I'd been erased from the system completely. Like I never existed. And then came the email. Forwarded from a generic HR account. No greeting, no warmth. Just a subject line. Severance and NDA terms. Action required. Inside was a 6-page document offering me 9 months' pay in exchange for silence. If I signed the NDA and non-disparagement clause within 48 hours, the money was mine. Paragraph after paragraph of carefully crafted legalese, ending with a vague threat that read more like a dare. Any violation of this agreement may result in litigation. I didn't sign. Not because I had a plan. I didn't. But something in me recoiled at the idea of disappearing quietly. I stared at my phone again. I called 3 people I'd trained, promoted, supported through layoffs and promotions. Straight to voicemail. One had blocked me on LinkedIn. Another's number had changed. By morning, I was scrolling through old threads, staring at gray check marks and dead ends. I wasn't just fired. I was radioactive. I was the woman who got walked off stage and edited out of the company memory like a typo. At 12:42 a.m., I finally got a message. It was from Sophie Tranme, former assistant. I know you're not done. I'm still in. Signal me, delete this after. I stared at those words like they were a lifeline. Then, out of nowhere, I laughed. It came out sharp and dry and halfway to a sob. Sophie, who color-coded everything from her Trello boards to her highlighters, was the only one who hadn't vanished. She still believed I wasn't finished. And maybe she was right. The truth is, that night didn't end with a plan. It ended with a choice: to sit in the silence, or to break it. And in that quiet, I felt something begin to stir. Not rage, not revenge. Something colder, sharper. Focus. It started with a text. Just 5 words that lit a fuse I didn't know was still connected. He finally cut you. Ready? No sender name. But I knew the number. Jonas Pierce. Venture capitalist. Board whisperer. The kind of man who could tank a startup with a well-placed eyebrow. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since he'd pulled out of our Series D because, in his words, too much shine, not enough spine. Now he was reaching out, like a fisherman who'd spotted blood in the water. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen for what felt like 10 minutes, fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure if I wanted to open a door I knew couldn't be closed again. But curiosity is a powerful drug. The next morning, I met him at an old bookstore in Capitol Hill. The kind with crooked shelves and a cat that stared at you like it had seen things. Jonas didn't say hello. He didn't even stand up when I walked in. He just tilted his head toward the seat across from him and said, "Halden made a mistake. But I'm guessing you already know that." I said. "Cutting you is dumb," he continued, flipping a page in the newspaper like we were discussing the weather. "Cutting you in public? That was suicidal." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, an actual envelope like some Cold War spy movie, and slid it across the table. Inside, spreadsheets, internal emails, growth forecasts that looked oddly generous. Too generous. Echelon, I muttered, scanning a slide labeled Projected Revenue Streams. End of sum. I'd never heard of it. Jonas leaned back. "That's because it doesn't exist." I looked up at him. "It's smoke," he said. "A phantom product they've been using to inflate valuation. Stealth mode, Colin calls it. But there's no team, no timeline, just a name and a price tag." I let that sink in. "And you want what?" I asked. "Not revenge," he said, voice low and measured. "Exposure, justice. I want the truth on record before this company becomes the next cautionary tale." I should have walked out right then. I should have thanked him for the coffee and gone home to my NDA and my quiet exit. But something in me, something I thought had burned out, flickered back to life. Because this wasn't just about a product that didn't exist. This was about my name, my work, my signature on quarterly reports that might now be tied to numbers I'd never approved. This was about being used-erased and expected to stay silent. I tapped the folder gently. "You have more?" I asked. Jonas nodded. "Then let's talk." I didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety, but from clarity, the kind of mental sharpness that makes your hands shake from stillness. Jonas had given me enough to suspect. But suspicion wouldn't be enough. I needed receipts. My own. So I pulled out my old ThinkPad, me personal one, the one IT never touched, and started digging. It was strange logging into systems I hadn't touched in months. Stranger still was how quickly I found what I wasn't supposed to see. Half the reports I'd approved over the past year had been altered. Not rewritten, just tweaked. Just enough to shift a number here, inflate a metric there. A bump in user adoption, a drop in churn, a jump in marketable engagement. Things that looked innocent. Until you realized they didn't line up with the raw data I'd archived privately. Data that should have been long deleted. That's when I found it. A Q3 report. My name at the bottom. My digital signature. Except I never signed that version. The timestamp? 3:12 a.m. on a Sunday. I wasn't even in town that weekend. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. A file merge. A versioning error. But the more I compared, the more it became clear. Someone, Colin, almost certainly had taken drafts I'd worked on, scrubbed them, padded the numbers, and re-exported them with my name, my reputation, my credibility. Like camouflage, I stared at the screen, jaw locked so tight it hurt. It wasn't just betrayal. It was identity theft with a spreadsheet and a smile. The next morning, I met Sophie at a coffee shop 2 towns over. Neutral ground. She sat facing the door, sunglasses on indoors, sipping chamomile tea like it was moonshine. "They're already memory, holing you," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Your folder's gone. Internal wiki has you listed as former advisor. Some intern is listed as interim head of product." I blinked. "That's not even legal." She shrugged. "Doesn't mean it's not happening." Back home, I opened the drive. Inside were my milestone reviews, quarterly audits documents I didn't even remember being duplicated, but Sophie had backed them up, quietly. Said something felt off weeks before the summit. It wasn't paranoia. It was foresight. I spent the next 10 hours building a timeline. Side by side, what I had submitted and what was sent to the board. The differences weren't just discrepancies. They were deliberate fabrications. And every one of them bore my name. At 2:37 a.m., I called Jonas. He picked up on the first ring. "I'm in," I said quietly. And he's dumber than I thought. The deeper I went, the less real everything started to feel. I wasn't just uncovering doctored numbers anymore. I was stepping into a world built on vapor. A world where what looked solid from a distance dissolved the moment you touched it. And at the center of it all was one word. Echelon. It showed up everywhere: slide decks, shareholder letters, internal comms framed as our next-gen growth engine. A revolutionary product designed to integrate AI-powered analytics with mid-market retail platforms. Sleek, scalable, strategic. One problem. It didn't exist. No engineers had been assigned to it. No Jira tickets. No GitHub repos. No roadmap. No beta testers. No customer feedback. Not even a Slack channel. I asked Sophie if she'd ever heard of Echelon during her time in product ops. She shook her head. Only ever saw it on one deck Colin presented to the board last fall. Said it was in stealth mode, tight circle only. Convenient. I dug further, tracing every mention of Echelon across internal drives and archived emails. Each time, it was name-dropped like a buzzword never explained, never detailed. Just positioned. I found a design mock-up. A single slide titled Echelon Overview, with a photo of a dashboard, obviously stolen from a competitor's public landing page. Cropped and rebranded. No code, no team, no timeline. Just a slide. And a dream. Jonas called later that afternoon. "He's raised 18 million off that name," he said flatly. "Convertible notes, pre-acquisition rounds. He's pitching it like it's already in beta." I felt my pulse in my throat. And the investors? Too blinded by the pitch to ask questions. Colin calls it stealth mode validation. I call it fraud with Wi-Fi. I leaned back in my chair. My apartment felt colder than usual. This wasn't just misrepresentation. This was systemic. Coordinated. We weren't talking about overzealous forecasting. We were talking about selling air as equity. And if they'd used my name to prop it up, then I wasn't just a victim of politics. I was a weapon in the con. Jonas sighed. "Look, I know you wanted a clean exit, but this is rot, and it's spreading." He paused. "If we don't stop it, someone else takes the fall when it collapses. And I guarantee it won't be Colin." I didn't answer right away. I was staring at that fake Echelon slide, hands clenched, remembering the late nights I spent building real things, real tools, real platforms while Colin was off selling smoke. And now that smoke had a name, a valuation, and a runway. And if I didn't do something, it would also have victims. We didn't go to the press. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Too noisy. Jonas had a better idea, one that felt less like revenge and more like precision surgery. We'd create a shell company. Nothing elaborate, nothing flashy. just polished enough to pass a Google search. A whisper of legitimacy with the right buzzwords and fake traction. He called it Veltrix Analytics. It would be registered in Delaware, because of course it would. With a boilerplate website, a fake CTO-zone bearded guy we found on a royalty-free image site and a mission statement so vague it sounded expensive. Veltrix is looking to invest in next-gen analytics infrastructure, Jonas said, tapping his tablet. Targeting verticals that include predictive modeling, dynamic reporting, and scalable retail pipelines. Translation. Exactly what Colin claimed Echelon was doing. And just like bait tossed into the current, it didn't take long. Within a week, we had a reply. From Colin himself. He was interested. Excited, even. Said the timing was perfect, and that he'd love to present the Echelon vision to us in an exclusive meeting. Jonas smirked when he read the email. God, he can't help himself. The meeting was set for Tuesday. Virtual, private Zoom link. No recording allowed on their end-standard CYA. But we'd already built our own back channel. Jonas brought in a friend compliance consultant turned security analyst who equipped us with software that could record everything. Video, audio, screen share, even keystrokes. Is this legal? I asked. Legal, adjacent, he replied. Let's just say you won't be the one in court. We staged everything down to the detail. I logged in from a co-working space in Tribeca. New haircut. Neutral background. Borrowed ring light from Sophie's cousin. My name on Zoom, C. Monroe, partner, Veltrix Analytics. When his face appeared on screen, I didn't flinch. Colin looked polished, confident, and completely unaware that the woman on the other side of the call had once signed off on his expense reports. Claria. Cassandra, was it? He said. I smiled. Yes, good to meet you. I've heard great things about Halden. He launched straight into the pitch. All buzzwords, no substance. Echelon is redefining how data works across verticals, he said, leaning back like a man who thought posture counted as strategy. We're seeing over 60% growth quarter over quarter, particularly in Tier 2 markets. Massive churn reduction. Strong engagement. New documents. New demo. Just declarations. I asked him gently about API readiness. About engineering capacity. About onboarding timelines. He answered with phrases like pre-integration alignment and forward-facing market validation. It was vapor. Wrapped in a suit. And every second of it was being captured. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel anything at all. I was just calculating. Every word he spoke became another number in the equation. Every claim another variable I could cross-check. Every lie another thread pulling the whole illusion apart. And when the call ended, I didn't speak. I just sent the recording to Jonas with one word. Done. If you've ever wanted to know how fraud gets dressed up in buzzwords and sold like innovation, stay tuned. The real unraveling starts now. The email to the SEC was just the first match. A clean, quiet tip. With attachments. Subject line. Material misrepresentation of financials. Internal evidence enclosed. But the real fire needed something louder. Jonas had a name. Maya Sterling. Senior investigations editor at the Financial Beacon. Known for three things: making CEOs sweat, turning whispers into front-page headlines, and never burning a source. I sent her the package anonymously. A Proton mail drop. No names, no IP trails. Just one neatly labeled folder. Echelon, proof. Inside, the Zoom recording. The doctored reports. The side-by-side comparisons. Even metadata timestamps showing file manipulation. All tied together with a short note. This product doesn't exist. But $18 million says otherwise. It took less than 36 hours. By 7:12 a.m. Thursday morning, the headline was live. Phantom product, real money. Inside the illusion of Halden Tech's Echelon. The first sentence made my breath catch. What if your next investment pitch was built on a product that never shipped, never stuffed, never even started. It spread like wildfire. LinkedIn, Slack channels, Reddit threads with names like R, Startuples and R, Wall Street Trot. Twitter lit up with gifs of smoke bombs and people asking, "Wait, is this real?" People started forwarding the article back to me like I hadn't been the one who handed Maya the match in the first place. I didn't respond. I just watched. Inside Halden, chaos. Sophie texted from her office. 3 board meetings in 2 hours. Colin isn't talking to anyone. People are scrubbing their Slack histories. Okay. One engineer posted a single word on LinkedIn before deleting it 10 minutes later. Vapor. Screenshots of internal memos started leaking. Colin's statements were weak. Generic. Legal filtered. He called it a misunderstanding born from ambitious projection. That line alone became a meme. Someone edited his face onto a magician holding a puff of smoke labeled Echelon. And yet, despite the panic, despite the headlines, I felt, still. It was like watching a house burn from across the street. You don't scream, you just listen to the wood crack and know it's too late to save anything. Later that night, Jonas called. "We're not done," he said. "This isn't the collapse yet. It's just the tremor. He'll try to spin it." "I know," I said. "But the story's out." "Yeah," he said. "But you and I both know, stories don't sink companies." He paused. "Document do." He was right. We had lit the match. But the fuel was still in our hands. The first punch didn't land where I expected. I thought they'd issue a press release. Maybe a vague denial. Some executives speak about transparency and internal review protocols. I was wrong. Instead, they came after me. By noon the next day, an article appeared on a second-tier business blog, one I'd never heard of but immediately recognized as a PR laundering site. You know the type: insider sources, low fact-checking, high narrative control. The headline hit hard. Disgraced former VP. Tied to embezzlement scheme at Halden Tech. Below it, my name. My photo from a 2018 company retreat in Tahoe, cropped awkwardly around a champagne flute. And a paragraph full of fiction. The article claimed I had misused a wellness budget to fund personal consulting sessions and luxury travel. It cited anonymous employees describing me as manipulative and deeply bitter about her exit. This pa. They even quoted an unnamed director saying, "Claire always had her own agenda. This leak proves it." I sat there, staring at my phone, heart thudding not with fear, but with fury. Because none of it was true. Not a word. The most I'd ever misused was a company Amex to buy Sophie a standing desk when her sciatica flared up, and I'd cleared that purchase with finance. But facts didn't matter now. Within hours, my LinkedIn inbox filled with passive-aggressive, just curious messages. Twitter trolls chimed in. Someone dug up an old video of me presenting at a tech summit and slowed it down to make me look unhinged. The smear campaign had begun. I wanted to scream. To post everything. Every file, every timestamp. To rip the truth wide open and shove it down the internet's throat. But Jonas was the one who called this time. "Let it ride," he said. "Are you kidding?" I snapped. "They're painting me as a thief. One. And every move they make confirms they're bleeding." He replied calmly. "This is desperation, Claire. You don't fight a fire by throwing paper into it." I said nothing. He continued. "We're not trying to win Twitter. We're trying to win this. The boardroom. The audit. The regulators. Eyes on the prize." Later that night, Sophie called. "They're watching everyone," she whispered, like, really watching. Badge logs, print history. Even flagged my VPN. "Are you okay?" I asked. "A pause. I don't know." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone to my ear. "They're spinning hard," she added. "But people are scared. 2 analysts just quit mid-shift. Colin's prepping for something." I didn't ask what. I already knew. They were trying to bury the story before it could finish breathing. to bury me before I could finish speaking. But what they didn't know, what Colin never understood, is that I had never needed a microphone to be heard. I just needed the truth. And the right time to say it. The call came on a Sunday morning. No caller ID. Just a soft vibration on the nightstand, breaking the silence that had settled like dust. I almost didn't answer. But something about the timing, the quiet insistence of the ring, made me pick up. Claire Morgan? The voice asked, sharp, composed, female. Yes. This is Linda Cross. I sat up, fully awake now. She was a board member. Old guard. Respected. The kind of person who didn't waste syllables or tolerate nonsense. I'd pitched to her twice in my career, once on a product launch, once during an org restructure. She never smiled. She just absorbed. I need 15 minutes of your time, she said. Neutral location. We met in a public park near the water. She wore a gray coat, no makeup, and sunglasses that didn't quite hide the scrutiny in her eyes. She didn't offer small talk. No hello. No smile. You're behind the leak, she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't respond. She continued. The journalist. The SEC drop. The timing. All of it. Still, I said nothing. Just waited. You were the best strategist Halden had, she added. Sharp. Unshakable. Ethical until you weren't. That one cut deeper than it should have. I had braced for skepticism. I wasn't ready for disappointment. She looked at me like I was a child who had broken her own science fair project out of spite. This really about integrity? She asked. Or is it that you couldn't stand being outmaneuvered by someone younger? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then, finally quietly, I said, what if both are true? She blinked. What if I am furious? I continued. And he's also lying to your face. The air between us shifted slightly. Barely. But it did. Linda looked out toward the water, silent for a long beat. Then, just before walking away, she turned and said, if this burns, it takes the whole company with it. Hundreds of jobs. Legacies. You willing to wear that? She didn't wait for an answer. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the growing stack of evidence. Emails, reports, call logs, product screenshots, Slack messages, version histories, source code comments. All of it real. All of it damning. I wasn't trying to save Halden anymore. That ship had a hole the size of Colin's ego. But maybe, just maybe, I could stop him from selling the wreckage as a cruise ship. I picked up my phone and called Sophie. She answered instantly, voice low and tight. They started shredding paper on the 4th floor, she whispered. Legal just flagged my badge for audit. Are you safe? I asked. A long silence. Then, you okay? I didn't know what to say. I wasn't okay. I wasn't even sure what okay looked like anymore. I just whispered. Linda found me. She thinks I'm doing this for revenge. And is she wrong? Sophie asked. I closed my eyes. She's not, I admitted. Sophie let out a long breath. You didn't start this. You're just finishing it. That silence again. Then she said, you were the one person who actually built this place. And he's about to sell it to vultures who will strip it for parts. She was right. And I wasn't about to let Colin walk away untouched. The boardroom smelled like antiseptic and espresso. The kind of sterile tension you only find in places where powerful people are pretending not to panic. 12 chairs. One walnut table wide enough to land a drone on. A wall of frosted glass that blocked out the chaos humming just beyond it. Colin stood at the head of the table in a charcoal suit, tan deeper than usual probably, spray on and eyes twitching just enough to betray the calm he was faking. He started speaking before everyone had even settled. Let's not let a media frenzy distract us, he said smoothly. This is a coordinated attack, one I intend to address fully, with legal counsel. What matters is our momentum, the vision, the legacy. He didn't look at Jonas, seated directly across from him. But the tension between them sat thick in the air, like fog no one wanted to name. Elaine, another board member, composed and cautious, sipped her coffee without comment. Colin pressed on, smiling like he still thought charm would carry him. Echelon is real, he declared. We're simply in stealth mode. Early phase. Interest from several Tier 1 partners. Which partners? Jonas interrupted, flatly. Colin blinked. I'm under NDA. As you know. Jonas didn't flinch. He tapped his tablet. A small speaker chirped to life in the center of the table. And then, Colin's voice. Crystal clear. From the Veltrix call. We're seeing north of 60% growth quarter over quarter. APIs are active, market validation already behind us. The room froze. Colin's face paled, then hardened. You're seriously playing recorded private conversations? You lied, Jonas said, voice calm as glass. To investors. To the board. That's not vision. That's fraud. A beat of silence. Then Elaine set her coffee down. Who else was on that call? And that's when the doors opened. I stepped in, no badge, no title, just heels, binders, and a file box labeled Truth in black Sharpie. The oxygen seemed to leave the room. One of the board members, Paul, the one who wore Patagonia vests like armor, visibly flinched. I placed the binders on the table, one by one. Inside, printed copies of doctored pitch decks, financial records, metadata logs, screenshots of source code commits that tied Colin's name to product timelines that never existed. Verified, time-stamped, backed by 5 current and former employees. No one spoke. Colin stared at me, jaw tight. A muscle twitched near his temple. I didn't gloat. Didn't even smile. I just said, clearly, the product doesn't exist. The pipeline doesn't exist. The revenue doesn't exist. The only thing that does exist is a trail of manipulation designed to inflate this company's value before a sale. Colin opened his mouth. I held up a hand. Don't. Every time you speak, you dig deeper. And for once, he stayed quiet. Elaine flipped through a binder. Paul muttered something under his breath about breach of fiduciary duty. Another board member, Daria, just shook her head. Jesus Christ. Jonas cleared his throat. I move for immediate termination of Colin Hale. For cause. No severance, no delay. Hands went up. All 12. Unanimous. Colin didn't argue. He didn't even speak. He just stood there, small, silent, dethroned. And then, finally, he walked out. Not with a bang, but with the quiet collapse of a man who built his empire on fog and found out the wind had changed. No applause. No statement. No redemption arc. Just a pen, a nameplate, and a company that suddenly had no captain. After Colin walked out, Jonas opened his briefcase and slid a single document across the table. Interim CEO appointment, Claire Morgan. I didn't reach for it right away. I just stared at the signature line already bearing my name. Someone has to turn off the fire alarms, Jonas said quietly. I picked up the pen. Not because I wanted the seat, but because I wanted the keys to the wreckage. That first week, I didn't sit in the CEO's office. I didn't even move my things upstairs. I worked from a glass conference room near the floor where engineering sat, where people were still showing up with their heads down and their bags half packed. No announcements. No speeches, just action. I started with the sycophants, Colin's chosen few who had enabled the illusion, nodded in meetings, and padded reports without question. Most were gone within days. Some I let resign. Others I fired. Clean cuts. No shame. No spectacle. Then I called the engineers. The ones who'd been ignored. Gaslit. Pushed aside in favor of optics and open bars. They didn't trust me at first. I didn't blame them. So I did the one thing Colin never would have done. I listened. And I paid. Retention bonuses. Mental health stipends. Back pay for overtime that had been written off as passion hours. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. I sold off 2 vanity subsidiaries, both PR stunts in disguise. I dissolved the wellness tech division entirely. Nothing about that team had been well. Or tech. No LinkedIn posts. No triumphant press tours. Just silence. And the slow process of pulling wires from a burning wall. People noticed. Quietly, cautiously. Sophie stopped by my office. If you could call it that in my last day. She didn't bring a clipboard. No laptop. Just a look on her face I hadn't seen in months, clarity. You need to see this, she said, handing me a flash drive. Black. Unmarked. Warm from her palm. I plugged it in. Inside were emails. Dozens of them. Colin's emails. To Legal. To our former CTO. All with one objective. Remove Claire Morgan's name from the IP registry. 3 patented data visualization toolzones I had designed, prototyped, and pitched. He'd planned to erase me from them entirely. Replace my credits with corporate authorship. A stealth erasure. Permanent. Legal. Quiet. Sophie stood across from me, arms folded, saying nothing. She didn't have to. I clicked through each folder, breath steady. And then I leaned back. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just sharp. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about closing the door. My way. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering above the keyboard. 3 patents. 3 tools I'd built from the ground up. And 3 quiet attempts to erase me from all of them. The emails were precise, cold, almost surgical in tone. Transfer authorship to internal entity. Ensure all legal references cite Halden Tech exclusively. Remove Claire Morgan from all public-facing filings. It wasn't personal to Colin. It was strategic. I was a riskin, unpredictable variable. So he tried to turn me into a footnote. Or worse. Nothing at all. But he forgot something. You can fire a title. You can wipe a login. But you can't erase authorship from memory. Not when you were the one who built the foundation. I closed the laptop gently. No slamming. No dramatics. Just clarity. That flash drive small, silent contained everything I needed. So I did the only thing that felt right. I filed for reassertion. 3 separate submissions to the US Patent and Trademark Office. Each one with documentation, timestamps, original code snippets. Everything Colin had hoped was buried. I didn't attach a lawyer's letter. I didn't issue a press release. I just filed, attached proof, and put only one name on the forms. Claire Morgan. No team. No board. No shared credit. Just the person who had stayed late, prototyped alone, debugged on airplanes, and answered support tickets on weekends when everyone else was already at the after-party. Sophie sat across from me, watching. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. When I finally hit submit, the cursor spun for 2 seconds. Then the page refreshed. Your submission has been received. And that was it. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not wide. Not smug. Sharp. Precise. Balanced. The kind of smile that doesn't come from victory, but from knowing the scales are finally even. They tried to call me disgraced. Tried to sell off my work, then scrub my name from it. But the funny thing about legacy? You don't get to write mine for me. You don't get to narrate my ending. I do. So, if you're listening to this, and you've ever been pushed out of something you helped build, if you've ever been told to stay quiet, to sign the NDA, to walk away and be grateful, don't. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. And you are not done. Subscribe if you're ready to reclaim your voice, because the next story could be yours.